The assistance from the United States, led by President Biden, and they are doing it again today, but there will never be enough. Enough isn't possible. There is a full-scale war ongoing today, so we still need a lot more than what we have today. For Biden's confirmed $800 million in support, what's most important is speed.
Joining us now is Newsmax contributor Fred Fleitz. He's a former CIA analyst and former chief of staff of the National Security Council in the Trump administration. He's now with the America First Policy Institute. So, Fred, unbelievable. You've written an op-ed entitled, "We Want to Arm Ukraine to the Teeth. Why Won't Biden Do It?" So last week, Biden announced that he had an additional $800 million in aid coming, but as President Zelensky puts it, thanks, but we need it faster. So why is the administration so behind on getting Ukraine what it needs?
Logan, Lindsay, it's good to be here. You know, we've seen these repeated Biden speeches in which we hear this laundry list of weapons that are being promised. Biden gets all kinds of positive press, and then the weapons don't arrive. I think Biden is worried about provoking Putin. There's no excuse for this. If the U.S. military wants to do something, it can move mountains. And it isn't just bureaucracy. I think there's been deliberate foot dragging. And look, the Ukrainians need these weapons now, while the Russians, I don't want to say they're in retreat, but they're regrouping. And this is an opportunity where the Ukrainians can actually take back territory. They need these weapons immediately.
Yeah, I mean, we should have already had them there, essentially, Fred. You know, this weekend, President Zelensky said that he believes Putin is fully capable and willing to resort to nuclear war. Do you think that the U.S. is fully prepared to act in kind, as Biden said we would, if President Putin does go nuclear?
I think we're in an unusual stage right now. You know, a few weeks ago, we were hearing Zelensky say that he might agree to some type of a peace treaty in which territorial issues were resolved later. Now we're looking at the Ukrainians being on the offensive and attacking Russians. And I think that does raise the possibility that if Putin thinks he's in a corner, he could resort to weapons of mass destruction. I think it's more likely he would use chemical weapons. I don't think that Putin would use nuclear weapons, because I don't think he wants to destroy Ukraine and would worry about radiation wafting, clouds of radiation wafting over Russia. But I do think we're in a much more dangerous stage right now.
Fred, everyone is asking what's Russia going to do next, but they never ask what's the United States going to do next. I mean, like Kim Reynolds says, the governor from Iowa, that we aren't driving actions around the world, we're just reacting to them. We've been reactionary this entire time. Take a look at what the National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, though, from April 10th said, where he claims it's America that's taking the lead.
It was President Biden in the United States that took the lead at the United Nations last week, for example, to kick the Russians out of the Human Rights Council, rallying the world to do that. It is the United States that is taking the lead in organizing and delivering not just our own military supplies, but those of allies and partners.
So two things, Fred. One, does anyone buy that at all? And two, at this point, could Biden have actually made a difference at all from stopping this from happening?
I think it's pretty clear we've been leading from behind. The Europeans have been taking the lead. We did very little to negotiate with Putin to try to discourage him from invading. Not that it would have, I don't know whether Putin's mind could have been changed. But I mean, we simply don't have a president with a weak foreign policy who unfortunately seems to be suffering from a mental decline. He's surrounded by extremely weak aides. And then just as the fighting broke out, he sends Kamala Harris to Eastern Europe to talk about this issue, where she frankly made a fool of herself. I think we know all that. So we're not leading here. And I think the lack of leadership by this administration is making the world much more dangerous, because I think our enemies are looking at what they can get away with during this presidency.
You're exactly right on that one. Democratic Senator Chris Coons, he is now saying that the U.S. should put boots on the ground in Ukraine. Watch what he had to say.
We are in a very dangerous moment where it is important that on a bipartisan and measured way, we in Congress and the administration come to a common position about when we are willing to go the next step and to send not just arms, but troops to the aid and defense of Ukraine. If the answer is never, then we are inviting another level of escalation and brutality by Putin.
I know that there was a lot of frustration in the beginning from President Biden showing his cards too early and not holding those close to the chest, saying we would never do it. But in your mind, is there any world where you feel like this would make sense or be the right move to put U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine?
I was so disappointed that Senator Coons said this. I thought he was someone who might join the Biden administration to give him sensible advice. I want to see Ukraine armed to the teeth. I want to stand up to Putin. But look, I believe in America first, which means we stay out of unnecessary wars. We use our military force prudently. We don't like what's going on in Ukraine. We do not have strategic interests there, and I don't want our soldiers engaged in a conflict that could start a nuclear war between the United States and Russia. Coons should not be saying things like this. I'm against the involvement of any U.S. troops in Ukraine.
Before we let you go, real quick, I do want to ask you this. A lot of people have been talking about if President Biden should go to Ukraine. Obviously, Zelensky has nodded to the fact that he's welcome to come. In 20 seconds, do you think that President Biden should consider going at all?
I don't want to see a U.S. president in Ukraine. Look, Hogan and I have flown on these trips. We know what's involved, the enormous security concerns. I just think it is too big a risk for the leader of the free world. It is a photo op that would cost the American people a lot of money. I don't want to see him do it.
Right. It's almost as though there's a more risk than there is reward, considering the president's had some tough times, not just here domestically, but overseas as well. Thanks so much, Fred. Appreciate the time.
Good to be here.